If you've been left out of a will or insufficient financial provision, is it possible to do anything about it? So what is the Inheritance Act? Well, Max Murphy is a paralegal within JMW's contested probate department. So let me ask you, Max, what is the Inheritance Act and in what circumstances do claims arise?
So the phrase Inheritance Act claim is a shorthand expression that we often use to refer to a claim which is being brought under the Inheritance Provision for Family and Dependents Act 1975. Now, that act allows certain categories of persons who have either been left out of a will or have been left insufficient provision within a will to apply to court and make a claim against the estate of a deceased person, alleging that they didn't make reasonable financial provision for them. Now, I should also say, Dominic, that these claims can be brought even where the deceased person has died without leaving a will, i.e. they've died intestate. In terms of the circumstances in which give rise to these claims, they're quite varied. And I'll give you a good example, which we often see. Let's assume that John and Jane are married. They have two children, Bill and Ben. In their lifetime, John and Jane create mirror wills, which essentially means that they leave everything to one another. And then on the death of the second person, there's an intended beneficiary that's probably agreed by the two of them. John dies first, unfortunately. Everything he has therefore passes to Jane in accordance with his will. And Jane subsequently remarries, and she leaves everything to her husband by a new will. On her death, everything would then pass to her new husband. And so Bill and Ben would have nothing from either their father's estate or their mother's estate. In those circumstances, Bill and Ben would probably be eligible claimants. And as I say, that's a very typical example that we see.
And I noticed you said that only certain people could bring a claim. What do you mean by that, Max?
So, yeah, as I say, Dominic, there's only certain people that can bring these types of claim. And the categories sort of are as follows. It's a spouse or civil partner of the person who's passed away. You then have a former spouse or former civil partner, so long as they've not remarried or entered into a new civil partnership. You also have people who, prior to the deceased person's death and for the 2 years prior to that period, were living with the deceased as though they were spouse or civil partner. You also have any children of the deceased person or a child that was treated by the deceased as a child of their own. And you also have any person who is being maintained by the deceased immediately prior to their death.
And how does the court decide these types of claims?
Well, there's various different questions that they have to consider. The first is this person eligible to bring a claim? The second is, does the will or the intestacy type situation provide reasonable financial provision for the person applying? If not, should the court intervene so as to make further provision from the estate? And if they feel that it's right for them to intervene, what type of provision should they be making? Now, in terms of the second question, the court will have regard to 7 factors. To give you an example of some of those factors, the ones that are very often referred to, you can have the financial resources of the person applying and their needs in the future. You can also have the financial resources and needs of any beneficiary now and in the future. We also have to consider the size and nature of the deceased person's estate. So by that, I mean how much potential money we're talking about, and the assets, what are they comprised of? Is it property, that type of thing? And another factor is any physical or mental disability of the person applying or of any beneficiaries. And again, that can often be of importance. Now, if the court decides to make reasonable financial provision, then the court ultimately has a number of options open to it. The court's powers are fairly wide. Typically, a court will often make an award of a lump sum of money, but they can also award periodic payments. In truth, the factual circumstances will often dictate the award that the court will make.